How do you keep track of type isomorphisms?
The thing that is maybe one advantage that I have here is that my particular mind is constructed in sort of a way that I can just do this in my head. For other people, it's worth drawing out because you want to see that type isomorphism as a kind of graph or as a kind of image where I have, a circle with the word universe over it, another circle with the word real over it, and then inside of that I kind of have this partitioning like a pie graph, and it's got creation, existence, interaction, and then over here I've got another pie graph under real where I see um, um, change, causation, and choice. And then I can draw lines that connect the two sets of pies, right? And those lines represent the notion of type isomorphism, and each of the pies themselves represent the notion of foundational triplication. And so in effect, what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, anything that we can talk about, which is the quality of change, is going to map to the quality of interaction. And that's kind of obvious. If you think about it, it makes sense that that's the case. They both represent a kind of temporality, or the kind of sense where they represent transformations of sorts. And then when we go to causation and existence, right, we can see the same thing. There's a fundamental symmetry involved. Right? The very notion of how these things are in the world, that when we talk about universal laws, we're talking about a kind of symmetry. And when we're talking about the notion of existence, we're talking about a kind of symmetry. Everything exists in the same way. They either all exist or they don't. So in other words, the notion of existence has a sort of fundamental symmetry. And then when I look at the notion of creation and the notion of choice, again from a sort of perspective here that, and again, I won't cover this right away, but the idea of continuity is relevant. That there's essentially a fundamental dynamic about newness that arises in both cases. And so in effect, there's a sense in which there's an unknowability that arises in both cases. Right? We know change. Right? We know interaction. And then we come into the potentiality to know causation. Right? We've learned a lot about causation. But creation and choice, ultimately, those are unknowable. There's something about the nature of them which only allow us to know so much, and it's not very much. But I can talk about the character of unknowability and the properties and characteristics that implies about the practice of making good choices, which is part of the reason why these conversations are even relevant.